Okay, Chapter 25, Transition to Modern America. Well, World War I had taken America's industrial possibility and simply skyrocketed. As a result, our output was high, our economy was strong, and our people were working. American workers had good wages, and the economy is certainly growing. By 1920, the American people had the highest standard of living of any nation on earth. As a matter of fact, between 1927 and 1929, our industrial output would double and our GNP would rise by 40%. This chart here kind of goes into this. If you take a look at it down at the bottom, from 1919 to 1930, that chart represents basically it's all the money that America is making. And sure, there's a couple of dips, but overall, from 1919 to 1929, things go up, really, really up. Now, from 1929 to 1930, that's the stock market crash and the Great Depression. But during the 20s, overall, things are going to be really, really good here in America. The key to all this is going to lie in new technological advances. And what's going to happen is all this growth, it's going to launch America on a great spending spree. And like I said, the key to that is going to be technological advances. Electric motors are going to replace steam engines and coal in factories. Improvements to the assembly line are going to increase production to the point that America is simply going to produce twice as many goods in 1929 as it did in 1919. At the center of all this is going to be the automobile industry. In 1920, there were 10 million cars in the nation. By 1929, there were 26 million cars in the nation. It's that many customers with that much money, with that much time that they wanted and could afford, and actually cars made sense. So everybody's running around buying a car, and that's great because that's going to fuel other industries as well. Steel for the body of the car, rubber for the tires, oil to run the engine. It's all going to grow, and it's all going to help the American economy. Now, cars are not the only big change. Electricity in our homes is going to grow. By 1929, nearly 2/3 of all homes are going to have electricity. So Americans with good paychecks are going to go out and buy washing machines and vacuum cleaners and electric refrigerators and stoves. And all this is going to make life easier. And all of this is going to make things possible with the higher wages and the electricity and just overall improve the standard of living. Radio is going to be common at people's homes. Movies are going to grow in popularity as, again, more Americans with more money in their pockets and extra time on their hands are going to seek new forms of entertainment. But there will also be cracks in the system. The new method of moving things back and forth is not going to be railroads anymore. The trucking industry is going to start to grow. And that's going to take business away from the railroad, which has been the cornerstone of the American economy for so long. And that's going to be an issue. Oil will be replacing coal. Now, that's good in states like Texas and Oklahoma, where you have the oil fields. Not so good in southern Ohio and western Pennsylvania and West Virginia, where the coal industry is, in Kentucky and places like that. That's a problem for them. Synthetic fibers like rayon they're going to find it cheaper than cotton, and it's going to start to take the place of cotton. That's going to be bad for the South. But of everybody, it's probably farmers that certainly had it the worst. During World War I, farmers had expanded their farms and gotten loans to do it. During the war in Europe, the men had left the farming fields, the men had left European factories and gone off into the military and found themselves quickly in the trenches of World War I. What's going to happen, though, is that here in America, if you can manufacture it, if you can grow it, you can sell it because Europe is desperate for food. And so American farmers are going to run out and take out mortgages to buy more land, to get more farming equipment. They're going to take out huge loans because if they can grow it, they can sell it to Europe. So if you can grow twice as many goods, you can make twice as much money, and you can easily cover the costs of the loans. The problem is after World War I finally comes to an end, the men who survived the war go back to work. And once they go back to work, Europe starts providing for itself. And that means that these American farmers that had these extra mortgages for all this extra work and customers that they were doing, those customers have now gone away. And the size of the mortgage and the loan payment is still there. It's a huge problem for farmers. We're going to be getting into that a lot. Factory work and salaries are also going to have an impact from the end of World War I, in that salaries are going to level off, and the rise in growth in salaries, that's going to settle in. Elsewhere here in America, African Americans who had migrated north during the Great Depression are going to find that in these northern factories, they're going to be making less money than white workers, but more money and a better standard of life than they had as sharecroppers in the South. And so the Great Migration will continue even after the war as more and more African Americans continue to leave the South to get out of that segregated lifestyle, to get out of sharecropping and find themselves in northern factories, working northern jobs in these big American cities that are going to be up there. That's certainly going to be growing. Now, doing best in all of this situation, well, as not a shock to anybody, it's going to be the rich. Somewhat the middle class, but the rich are really going to be benefiting. They're the ones that are going to be capitalizing on this increased economy and all this increased growth, whereas workers' wages are going to stagnate. The wealthy are going to get even wealthier. And what's going to happen? This will become even more dangerous as more and more of the nation's wealth will be concentrated in the hands of an increasingly smaller group of people. This is the same group of people that's going to be losing the money when the stock market crashes, and that's one of the reasons the American economy is going to suffer so much. Is because of this concentration of wealth that then gets lost in one fell swoop. But that's a problem for another day. We're not quite there yet. Cities are certainly going to be growing in America. They become the dominant location. It is more and more young Americans are going to choose to leave country life for the city. And quickly running out of room, most cities are simply going to begin to build up. And we get the creation of skyscrapers as more and more people are crowding into this space. It's kind of, you can't expand outward, so it goes up. And this is going to help the steel industry because the girders that are used to support the buildings themselves, that becomes a great opportunity. So again, everywhere the economy looks around, there's great jobs, there's great economy, there's great things that are in fact happening. As a matter of fact, lives for women are going to be changing as well. During World War I, opportunities for women grew. And then after the war, though, this slowed down. And many women became trapped in some lower wage jobs with better opportunities going for male employees. Now, the biggest change for women was when the 19th Amendment was passed, granting them suffrage. Then this women's movement seemed to undergo a real change as the main unifying goal of suffrage had been granted, and women now had the right to vote. Work opportunities, although not equal to men, were better. Women began to focus more on personal change and rather than change for all women as a whole. Breaking free from Victorian era morals and values and expectations, women, and especially those living in cities, began to express themselves and enjoy the opportunity of self-sufficiency. And this became kind of the birth of the flapper. Women are going to cut their hair short. They're going to raise their hemlines. Women are going to go out and have a good time, do whatever it is that they want to do. Whereas those Victorian morals and those Victorian ethics that were the expectations of acting, in a womanly, that virtues of Republican motherhood that we talked about, that's gone. Women are going to be, driving cars. They're going to be going out at night. They're going to be putting on makeup. They're going to be drinking and dancing and generally doing whatever they wanted in open defiance of those old Victorian era values and expectations that expected them to just sit at the home under the supervision of a father or a husband or maybe a brother and just kind of like sit and wait for marriage and kind of do virtuous things. And women begin simply to live the kind of lives that they want to live. Effective forms of birth control are going to help women as they're now able to control their pregnancies or the size of their families, thereby freeing them up with a house with, again, these watchful eyes of fathers and brothers so they could go out and enjoy themselves and to be free from expectations and things that maybe they didn't necessarily want. Now, although prohibition and the passage of the 18th Amendment made the manufacture, sale, and purchase of alcohol illegal, young men and women armed with the money and the outlook on our lives, things kind of changed. This ability to get access to alcohol even as a result of prohibition, having access to cars, a good economy meant that money had flowed into the hands of a younger working class. And then they were going to go out and they were really going to enjoy their lives. Their viewpoint on life is going to be very, very different from their parents. Who had grown up, like I said, with those Victorian values and things like that. But this generation is going to be completely different. This generation, they're going to be enjoying the good life, and it's going to create a real difference in the generations. Speakeasies will open up to provide alcohol for those who still want it. And mobsters like Al Capone are going to go into business making millions of dollars, putting alcohol into the hands of people who could afford to buy it legally. And with that, America let go of the serious responsibilities of the Jim Crow South, of Native Americans on reservations, of putting down rebels on islands in the Pacific, and we begin to establish a new empire. The problems of the progressive era are going to be gone, and the horrors of World War I. We're going to turn our attention from all of that really into having a good time, because we feel like we earn a little bit of a break. Now, intellectually, America changed as art and literature and expression is also really going to take on this new American view of life. And it's going to reflect as much as possible, not so much a glorious vision of the past, but a much more realistic vision of life as people are knowing it. Poets like T.S. Eliot and Ezra Pound and writers like Ernest Hemingway, they're going to discard traditional literary devices like rhyme and meter, and they're really going to go into much more clear, cold images that convey reality. Gone is going to be the glory of war, as veterans are going to write about the battlefield stripped of glory and glamour, but the harsh realities that they had actually found and what their experience were generally like. And this sense of reality is going to show up in the works, not just from the battlefield, but from daily life. T.S. Eliot is going to write a book called The Hollow Man in 1925, just about the emptiness of man living in a modern world, away from the more fulfilling lives of past generations. Hemingway, he's going to write about men alienated from society, seeking a sense of personal honor, in stark contrast to military glory or glory in the industry and finance. It's, that a lot of people had experienced and before. But it's the singular, quiet battles within ourselves. That's what Hemingway is going to go into. F. Scott Fitzgerald is going to write The Great Gatsby, and he's going to be writing that's about the hollowness of money and the impact of lack of human concern. This, in a time, with laissez-faire business and social Darwinism, was a message that was not lost on the working classes and the more working group of Americans. African Americans. They're going to find their voice in art too with the Harlem Renaissance. Please write this definition down. Harlem's a section in New York City that had long since been gathering a large selection of African American population. Harlem will become the center of a massive movement celebrating African Americans. As a matter of fact, the NAACP is going to move their headquarters there. Newspapers and magazines geared specifically for African American readers are going to be highlighted and written and sold in Harlem, as a movement of Black nationalism is going to grow centered in that city. As a matter of fact, artists and poets like Claude McKay and Langston Hughes are going to write about racial injustice and the pride that they have in being Black. Jazz music is going to grow, driven by African American musicians. And they're going to give sound to what's becoming a safe place to celebrate African American culture, and really for the first time in America, for African Americans to take great pride in who they are and what their culture is, and where that culture fits into the big all of America, and that maybe it's good to be an African American, and it's not a sense of shame, which kind of had been the case for the majority of the time of the United States by then. This rise in the lives of culture of African Americans is going to show up in the classroom as well, as you get a real movement to celebrate the education of African Americans. Here, what we're looking at is the graduating class of Morehouse College in 1923. In 1920, 391 African Americans graduated college in America. Just 391. By 1929, that number is going to be 1,903. As really opportunities and educational opportunities are going to grow for African Americans, both specifically in Harlem, and then it's going to be starting to grow around the nation. Now, on the extreme end of this African American movement is going to be this guy. His name is Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey was born in Jamaica and had immigrated to the United States as a young man. He is going to develop a real fervent sense of Black nationalism, and he's going to encourage African Americans to separate from whites and form their own independent Black Africa. He's going to write a weekly newspaper called the Negro World, in which he's going to praise the beauty of Black people, the abilities of Black people, and really push his idea of Black separatism. He's going to demand that the teaching of Black history in schools become a nationwide thing. He's going to demand ends to lynching and segregation. But then he's also, he does some strange things. He's going to have himself elected the provisional president of Africa. Now, I'm not really sure what that means, but he liked it, and it was all part of the Black, caught up in the Black nationalist movement and this separatist movement. He's going to start a business called the Black Star Line. It's a corporation of cruise ships that he's hoping one day will be transporting African Americans to new lives in an independent Africa that he's going to be envisioning for himself and African Americans. Now, the company, this cruise line company, Black Star Lines, is going to run into a lot of financial issues. And Garvey will be diverting funds and donations for other Black charities and Black organizations, Black things that he's doing, into keeping this business afloat. And eventually he will be arrested and charged with mail fraud. Eventually he's going to be convicted for that. Now, Garvey was the product of a race of people long held down. Unlike Booker T. Washington, who had urged quiet productivity and education, giving African Americans the ability to support themselves and eventually gaining self-reliance, Garvey wants a fight, and he wants it right now. He's going to make a lot of controversial comments about the Ku Klux Klan, in which, although he's going to absolutely lash out at the violence that they use, he's also going to praise their upright candor on race relations in America, because it's going to show that things are not racially where we as a nation of free men with certain inalienable rights should be. The Ku Klux Klan makes clear that there are racial problems in America, and Garvey, that's the fight that Garvey wants. But a lot of people are going to be really caught off guard when he praises the Ku Klux Klan. Then he's going to change his dress and the way that he presents himself. And he's really going to start putting on some garish outfits designed to show pride that he has in himself and pride that he has in his people. And he typically is going to be seen out and about wearing uniforms like this as part of being the provisional president of Africa. And for his conviction on mail fraud charges, like I said before, he's going to be arrested, he's going to be put on trial, and he's going to be sentenced to 5 years in a federal penitentiary. His sentence will be protested by a lot who saw it as extreme. I mean, it was simply mail fraud. And he got 5 years in a federal pen. He was never accused of stealing money. He never put any of the money in his own pocket. It was not for his own benefit. He was simply diverting the funds to support this shipping business. His sentence will eventually be commuted after 2 years. But then, because he's a Jamaican national, he will be deported back to Jamaica. And that's kind of the end of Marcus Garvey here. Now, his real place in history, it's in the way in which he showed up, cloaked himself in pride of his race, and he's going to demand attention, and he's going to demand that people deal with him as a proud Black man, and that's going to set him apart from a lot of how other African Americans have been treated at the time. Whites are going to fear him because he will not be silenced. He will not settle down, and he will not be quiet. Civil rights leaders are going to fear him because he's going to push really, really hard and really, really fast for changes that a lot of people really might not be ready for. Now, in the end, he's not going to accomplish very much. His shipping business is going to fail. His newspaper is going to go out of business. At the time, he's going to be ridiculed for his mail fraud conviction and his clothes. And soon, other civil rights leaders are going to pick up the torch and take it in a new direction. But Garvey is important because he's really going to insist that people pay attention to the Black race and the abilities of Black people, and kind of in this big, loud, proud voice that's going to stand up for his people. With all the changes happening in America, some of the biggest differences, some of the biggest issues are going on in life between the country and life between the cities. as a real sense comes over many in America that the city is going to be representing everything that's wrong with America. You got saloons and women's livers and loose morals and new revolutionary thoughts and ideas. Whereas in the country, there's still this bedrock of traditional American values and everything that's supposed to be right about America. Of all the revolutionary thoughts and ideas running loose in America at this time, the most feared actually was not, the idea of women voting. It wasn't black nationalism. It's going to be communism. Less than a decade before this, Russia had fallen into revolution, and the communists under Vladimir Lenin had overthrown the Russian Tsar and instilled communism in America, and I'm sorry, in Russia. This fear as a nation of immigrants that some of these ideas were making their way into America, and the values of communism are very, very different from the values of America and capitalism in our sense of life. In communism, it's not so much the rights of man, it's the rights of government. It's not that if you work hard, you will benefit. It's that everybody is paid the same. It's not that people are going to be this idea, the American dream, that each generation can do better than the last generation. That's not part of communism. And there were a lot of fears that communist ideas are going to come into America and really fundamentally change things. And a lot of these ideas are going to be driven by the working class who's stuck in some of these low-paying jobs that really can't break free. That for them, maybe the idea of spreading out some of the wealth a little bit more is actually going to make a lot of sense. And that's going to scare a lot of people. Now, you've got, right after World War I, we talked a little bit about this heightened sense of nationalism. And this heightened sense of nationalism, again, is this overly patriotic fervor that your country is right and that everything about your country is the way that it should be, and anything else it's wrong, it's different, it's not America. World War I had created this real sense of nationalism and this feeling about what a real American is. The fact that someone that loves their country, it's someone that loves the values of freedoms, and questioning that or anything about America and questioning ideas of America and goals of America, it's simply not tolerated. Now, after all, let's look at the place that America's got in the world. We had just become a world power. Our economy was strong. We had won a war. Everything is great. Why would you question it? And people who wanted to challenge the thoughts of what had created all of this, for a lot of people, it meant that they simply wanted to damage the successes that we had. They want to damage America. Now, leading those most interested in changing America are going to be the supporters of communism. And so it's that fundamental shift from American values to communist values that really kind of brought out a real sense of crisis for a lot of people. And with that, a real communist fear is going to come across America. Communist fears are going to be known as a Red Scare. And the red has to do with the red in the color of the communist flag or the Soviet flag. And so the Red Scare simply refers to the color red, which symbolized communism. Now, keep in mind, social Darwinism is this real sense and that the wealthy are wealthy because they deserve to be wealthy, and the poor simply aren't as good a person. They can't appreciate the values of the rich. They can't appreciate what they've got, that they're probably fine right where they are because they really wouldn't understand it all anyway. Now, like I said before, for a lot of people who are poor, social Darwinism, no, they're not buying it. Yeah, they could certainly appreciate a softer bed and a quieter place and a warmer home for their children to live in, and enough food to feed their family on a regular basis and maybe do something nice for them every once in a while. And so communist ideas, for a lot of people who found themselves trapped in this life of poverty, working for people who were simply becoming richer and richer and richer and richer, it really kind of made a lot of sense. And that really kind of helped drive this fear, this communist push in America. Now, as you look here at the star, I want you to take a look at the symbols inside the star. Like I say, the communist color is going to be red. You're going to see a lot of red with things having to do with communists. As a matter of fact, they're going to be referred to as reds sometime. The Red Scare. It's a scare of this red. You've also got the hammer and the sickle, which are the two tools inside the star right there. Anytime you see those, you need to think communist because those are the symbols of communism. And as we progress into this next big part of history, this symbol, this color, the hammer and the sickle, and communism as a whole, that's going to be a big key thing. So kind of get used to that and realize that that symbol right there means communism, because it's going to be a big thing. Now, at most here in America, there may have been, 60,000 communists in the entire nation, but they happen to be located in cities. They were loud and they were not shy, and they were directly involved in labor movements. It's kind of a thing that they concentrated themselves on, because that's where the working men and women working for low wages and creating the profits for the wealthiest Americans were found. Leading the fear against communists is going to be the Attorney General of the United States, A. Mitchell Palmer. A series of bombs is going to be sent to famous, influential men in America, like John Rockefeller and Palmer himself. Palmer will quickly blame communists, and that this real fear of radicals is going to become overheated. And he will use the power of the American government to start rounding up groups of communists who he's going to blame for some of these attacks. And really, like I said, just absolutely rounding them up and putting them in jail. He's going to grab anarchists and communists and people like that who are going to be arrested, and a lot of them are simply going to be immediately deported to Russia without any trial, any hearing, any nothing. They're arrested, they're thrown in jail for a day or two while the ship is prepared. They're put on the ship and just shipped off to Russia and forced to get off, and there you go, we don't want them. Thousands of suspected communists are going to be arrested by the government, and this part specifically led by Mitchell. The government will break into homes, they'll break into meeting halls and union offices without warrants or probable cause, and just simply arrest and deport many. Eventually, some people in the government will speak up, not in defense of the communists, let's be clear about that, but in defense of due process of law, that the Attorney General of the United States was not following the law by just simply kicking people out. Eventually, this hysteria will settle down, but the damage is really going to be done as the first great Red Scare is going to hit America. And again, it has to do with communists and changes to the American way of life and changes to American concepts driven by this group of dissatisfied workers who want a bigger share of the profits, or at least to even out the money. Now, soon other great issues are going to dominate the 20s. Sacco and Vanzetti are going to be two Italian laborers who are going to be convicted and tried of a murder. With very little evidence. They are going to be anarchists. They are going to have some very extreme political views, and very much they're going to be the kind of things that were caught up in the fear of the Red Scare and the Palmer raids. And these guys are going to be tried, convicted, and executed, like I said, under very shaky circumstances and very little evidence. And there's a lot to believe that they were simply convicted of this because they were foreigners with thick accents who had some very radical political beliefs. Whether or not they killed this guy, very little evidence for that. But Sacco and Vanzetti, their whole thing is that America's scared of people trying to change things, and America is lashing out at that. And these two guys certainly get caught up in the middle of this. Prohibition is another big one. Prohibition had been passed and became law in January of 1920. It never really slowed the amount of drinking. There was still a ton of alcohol all over the place, even though Prohibition made it illegal. Prohibition means prohibit alcohol. So in case you needed to know that. But it made it, like I said, you could still get it, but you just had to turn to illegal sources in order to get it. People like Al Capone and the mafia are going to go into great business, making all sorts of money for producing alcohol, providing it for people. Another big thing that's going to be happening here in America that's really kind of frightening is the Ku Klux Klan is going to be making a real comeback. What we've got here is the top 10 states by membership of the Ku Klux Klan from 1920 to 1944. And the interesting thing, you can see the numbers in the red that are on there. For instance, Texas has 190,000 people that are joining the Ku Klux Klan. Illinois, 95,000 people that have joined the Ku Klux Klan. All the other states that are on there, even though they're not listed, they certainly have memberships, but it's anywhere between one person in the office to upwards to 60,000. 60,000 is simply the lowest number on this chart. But the thing is, take a look at where the numbers are, because that in there is a big clue for America at the time. The stronghold of the Ku Klux Klan from 1920 to 1924 is not in the former Confederacy like you might think. Alabama's not listed on here. Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee. They've got under 60,000 members, which doesn't get them included on this map. But states up in the north, Michigan, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, states like that, that's where the membership is really, really rising. Because during World War I, with the Great Migration, African Americans had left the South and gone into the North. And now the North, for the first time, is really dealing with a large population of African Americans. And some people didn't handle it well. As a matter of fact, in the state of Indiana, 240,000 people weren't handling it well. In Ohio, 195,000 people aren't handling it well. And instead of working together with people of people of color and minorities, are simply joining the Klan, and that's how they're lashing out. A lot of this has to do with the fact that America is really getting mixed racially and ethnically as African Americans are making their way up into the North. Now, the Klan, it's going to be much more in the open. It's going to be it's going to be different. Yeah, in the South and in different areas, they're going to be resorting to a lot of the violence that they always had before. But post-war fears of communism and values and different things, they're going to embrace more than just an anger towards African Americans. And there is where a lot of their growth is also going to come. Their hatred it's going to spread to, for instance, Jews or Catholics. Communists, especially. They did not like communists. They didn't like aliens coming in from the country, foreign immigrants, especially immigrants that weren't from Western or Northern Europe, like England or Germany or Scandinavian countries. Those were okay. But if they were coming from more Central or Europe or Eastern European countries, they're going to have big problems with them. As a matter of fact, like I said, the violence is certainly going to be there, but they're going to try and go mainstream. As a matter of fact, the Ku Klux Klan is going to control politically state legislatures in Texas, Oklahoma, Oregon, and Indiana. They're going to control the politics in these states. As a matter of fact, overall, the Klan is going to have an official membership of 5 million people in 1925. As this big debate is going on in America, where's the future of the country going to lie? That is, are white people going to control it like we always have? Or is this rise in minorities, is that going to begin to come in and change America? There's going to be social gatherings by the Klan. There's going to be a junior order for boys and girls. You can be the junior KKK Kids Club if you want at this point in time, as they're making moves to really, really, really go mainstream. Now, they're the Klan, and they really can't ever let go of the violence. And soon, the violence and some other issues regarding the Klan are going to be too much, and its membership and influence will drop. It'll pick up again in the 1950s. But you have, like I say, right here in the 20s, with a lot of what's going on in America, the Klan membership really spiked. They tried to go mainstream. They found real political success, and they found success kind of working their concepts and their beliefs into the homes of a lot of different American families. But then, the violence that it's associated with was always there, and it ended up costing them. Their influence will drop until the 50s. Now, this anti-immigrant message of the Klan, that did stick, however, became a real anti-immigrant movement that's going to sweep through America. Real fears that the effect of World War I would lead to a huge wave of immigrants looking for a fresh start came into the nation. And with that, Congress is going to pass the National Origins Act of 1924. This is going to limit immigration from Europe to 150,000 a year, with, like I said, the overwhelming majority of those going from Western and Northern European countries. It was absolutely racist to the bone. It was designed to keep America, to limit America to the kind of immigrants that were seen as the most like Americans, if you want to word it that way. But Different ethnic groups were identified. Yes, you can come in. No, you cannot. And there was very, very much an ethnically driven, racist driven agenda to the National Origins Act. And that was bad. But what's worse is that the National Origins Act of 1924 actually stayed on the books until the 1960s. And this act here influenced America for almost 4 decades. As the national origins of immigrants coming in, they were run through this screening process, and many people were simply denied access due to their ethnic background. It's very, very racist. It's a whole big bunch of problems. Another big movement that's going to hit in America at this point in time is going to be the religious fundamentalist movement. Now, traditional religious beliefs rooted and deeply in the lives of those who always felt alienated from the cities. This country lifestyle is where it's going to be based at. And they're going to be afraid of what's happening in the cities, the influence of science, the influence of what modernization means. It's going to create this real sense of religious revivalism in America. And that's really going to hit its peak in a town called Dayton, Tennessee in 1925 with what's going to be called the Scopes Monkey Trial. It's one of the biggest battles of the fundamentalist movement, and it had to do with education and the teaching of Darwin's theory of evolution versus the biblical version of creationism. And the town of Dayton, Tennessee wanted the biblical version of creationism taught to its students. And that's what the message that they wanted their kids to get. A guy named John Scopes was a science teacher in Dayton, Tennessee. He wanted to teach them Darwin's theory of evolution. It was against the law in Dayton for him to do this. He does it, and this huge trial takes place because he is fired from his job, and the trial kind of comes out of that. Really, what it ends up being is a huge debate over the future of the country: city values, country values, religious values, scientific values. The value of kind of like what's next is this clash that we talked about before between the city lifestyle and the country lifestyle really comes head to head. We're probably going to be able to get into this a little bit more into class too, because it's a focus of what's going on in the 20s as far as what's going to be next. America is really kind of at the point of modern industrialization, and really kind of turning ourselves away from the last stronghold of those country lifestyle that we had always had into much more, as the population has shifted to the cities and the values have shifted, and there's big change going on in America, and where we're going to be and what values we're going to hang on to and where we're going to look to change and grow. And boy, there's a lot happening. The Scopes Monkey Trial kind of personifies a lot of that. And then politically, there's going to be a lot happening too. This is President Warren Harding. He had promised the nation, after all the crisis, the Progressive Era and World War I, what he called a sense of a return to normalcy. But that is soon going to get lost. Really, Harding is going to be remembered in large part for scandal that hit his administration. He's a very unsuccessful president. The Teapot Dome scandal is going to be the big one, in which Harding himself had nothing to do with it. But his Secretary of the Interior, who's the one in charge of all the government's holdings on land, he's going to take 2 U.S. Navy oil reserves, places where the Navy is keeping large deposits of oil, in a place called Teapot Dome, Wyoming, and Elk Hills, California. And he is going to be bribed into letting these businessmen go in there and have access to all of that. It's going to be a problem because it's the oil that the Navy needs in case of an emergency so that it can keep its ships going and defend the nation. But this guy is going to be selling a lot of that oil to these private industries so that these guys can grow richer. He's going to get a big piece of that, but at the expense of the safety of the nation. And the Teapot Dome scandal is generally the only thing that you're going to hear when it comes to President Harding and his administration. And right as the Teapot Dome scandal is blowing up and everything is getting out of control, President Harding's going to go ahead and die. And with that, Calvin Coolidge is going to take over. This is President Coolidge. Now, he was a president known mostly for staying out of the way of business and really letting events play themselves out. He's a quiet man, but he's really not going to accomplish much. In 28, Coolidge is going to decide not to run for another term. And with that, America is going to elect Herbert Hoover to the presidency. Now, Hoover had an incredibly impressive resume. It's going to indicate he should have been a great president. He had graduated from Stanford. He got economics. That was his degree. He had worked for President Wilson running the U.S. Food Administration. After the war, he was appointed to the European Relief and Rehabilitation Administration. Really, it's a program helping Europe fix itself after the war. He was with Wilson at the Treaty of Versailles conferences as a key advisor. Later, he became the Secretary of Commerce under President Harding and President Coolidge. And in all of these offices, he had been really, really successful. He had believed in the strength of American industry and economy. And when he was elected in 1928 by a large margin, America really, really felt confident heading into the future that everything was going great. We had President Hoover at the helm. The economy was going great. American business is going great. Everything is fantastic. But really and truly, the bottom is about to fall out as gigantic problems are getting ready to come up and envelop us. And that is going to be the next chapter that we're going to be getting to. And so there is chapter 25. Thank you.